All right. So just a reminder, when we conduct a rate study, we're looking at recovering the full cost to provide service for water and sewer service within the city. And so we want to consider the cost to operate and maintain the system. We look at the day-to-day costs through the budget and the capital considerations, how we need to invest in the system to make sure that we have service for the customers. We use industry manuals to help guide that analysis for each utility. The Water Environment Federation Manual of Practice number 27 is for wastewater. That's the lower picture there. And then the upper picture is the M1 manual from American Water Works Association. And these manuals give us some methodologies and approaches that we use to accumulate costs and then look at how we can appropriately plan for the future through capital investment and strong financial planning criteria that we look at, such as adequate reserve balances or debt service coverage ratios, and then making sure we're using the latest and greatest as far as rate structures for appropriately charging customers for how they utilize the services. So some key drivers in this study: aging infrastructure and deferred maintenance. This is pretty common in a lot of rate studies that we are doing now and recently. So as systems are aging, the funding from either the federal government, which is how a lot of these assets were put in place, as far as especially large treatment plant assets back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Those funding sources have changed and are not at the level they were previously. And so over the last 10 to 15 years, we've needed to increase rates to fund those deficiencies for those larger assets, as well as the pipes. And expanding in growth is another factor. We need to make sure we have adequate capacity for the current customers as well as future customers so that new customers can continue to join the system if they wish. Key inputs, the 26 budget we use to start, and then the preliminary 2027 budget, again, refined slightly from December, but by and large, the same as we showed there. The capital funding, as we mentioned a lot, the December meeting, especially on wastewater, there's significant investments we need to make in the system to make sure that we're providing a high level of service. So for water, we're looking at about $5.5 million over the next 9 years. And that's primarily from available resources we have through rates and through a little bit of reserves that are existing. So that's a pay-as-you-go approach. We're not anticipating additional long-term debt for the water utility. On sewer, we do have some more significant upgrades, particularly to the treatment plant, as well as some on the collection system. And so we are anticipating the issuance of around $55 million of debt for that. And that will set us up for, again, meeting regulatory requirements in the future, as well as any capacity constraints that we have currently. So this is the summary of the capital funding plan. So we've identified those projects through planning, renewal and replacement of existing infrastructure. And again, these are all funded through existing rates and reserves that we have, and the proposed rates that we are bringing forward tonight and show you are supporting these capital projects. So there is, again, no long-term debt service that we're anticipating for water. This slide shows the summary of our total costs. So the dark gray shaded area is our O&M, or operations and maintenance expenses. We get this from the budget, and that's our materials and supplies, salaries, benefits, all of those sorts of costs. And we base it on the fiscal year 26 and 7 budgets, and then we escalate it into the future based on inflationary factors so that we can keep pace with our anticipated inflation of costs. We add in the blue area, that is the debt service that we have. Again, nothing further on water that we're anticipating. The gray or the green shaded area is the rate funded capital. That's the component that goes towards funding our annual capital. Again, that is completely funding those capital projects within water. And the solid line there is our current level of revenue for the water utility. And what you can see as we go out over time is that our expenses are over what our revenues are. And so we have some deficiencies. Those yellow bars are uses of reserves to cover those deficiencies. So you can see short term, we have some deficiencies based on the capital investments we need to make. And so we're funding through reserves. What we're proposing is that level of revenue represented by the dashed line, and that covers our costs over the long term. And then we start to also replenish those reserves that we've used up in the out years there, 29 through 31.
Josiah, can we?
Yes.
So I understand how you use historical numbers to project for 28 through 31, but it sounds like you used the same revenue numbers for 26 all the way through, or was a revenue number adjusted the same?
So
basically what I'm getting at there is I want to make sure that we're not overstating expenses and understating income, right?
Yeah, so the solid line is basically revenues at our current level with no proposed rate adjustments. So if we didn't make any changes to rates, that's what our revenues would be. The dashed line is what the new rates would produce. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So for sewer, a similar discussion as far as the summary slide here, but this shows, again, in green there, our long-term debt assumptions. So funding the treatment plant upgrades as well as some collection system improvements and the timing over the next 3 years and funding that through the SRF, which is on the ballot in April. So what that would do, again, we have the dark gray area, that's our O&M expenses. And the blue area, you can see then as we issue debt in 28, 9, 30, we'll be paying interest only if SRF loans are utilized for that until the debt hits. And then the full debt is out in 2030 after we've completed the project. And so we are proposing that dashed line to match that cost that we have, because what we'll need to demonstrate is the ability for sewer rates to cover those costs that we're anticipating. So that's the primary driver on the sewer side, is that large level of debt service that we're going to be taking on. To glance at our cash reserves, so again, we're utilizing some short term to help us transition the rates over time, but we do want to plan on replenishing those. And so that dashed line there represents an industry target that we often use, which is 90 days of operations and maintenance expenses. And this is primarily a cash flow metric to make sure that we have adequate reserves to meet our expenses that are coming on as we incur costs for providing service. What you can see is, again, we're just utilizing those reserves and then we're working towards that target. And ideally, we would be meeting that. Again, we wanted to be careful to not impact rates too much. And so we are using reserves strategically for that. But then just outside this window, we took it out 10 years for sake of making sure we can hit that metric until we get up to that line. And that also allows us to have reserves available for emergencies or catastrophic failures as well on the system. The proposed rates for water, we're maintaining the current structure on the fixed side. And then on the volumetric side, we're cleaning it up. We'll show it in a couple slides here in the table, but moving from a couple tiers on the water side to a uniform rate. So this should help the customers hopefully understand their bill a little bit better and clarify once you get over the first 1,000, which is included in your minimum, then anything over that, each unit is at a uniform rate, where currently there is a couple different rates. On the sewer side, again, the fixed charge and the minimum for the first 1,000 is unchanged from the current structure. And then the volume charge, we are going to, again, a volumetric over the first 1,000. And we have, for residential customers, an option to be charged on their winter water average. So this would help customers that might utilize more water outside, either for irrigation or other purposes. And so what it does is it creates a more levelized bill for those customers. The overall bill will likely be very similar as to someone with all volume billed and a lower peak, which is what we typically look at is their peak summer usage. And so this will be an option for customers to help them control their bill, as well as, use their usage to lower their costs if they so choose. This is a table showing the proposed rates for water. As I mentioned, the meter charge is the first component for the fixed charge piece. We have a charge by meter size, so we look at the capacity of water that goes through the lines. Obviously, a larger line can have more potential capacity, and so we use industry manuals to look at that as well. So that's why those charges increase the larger the size is. And that recoups our fixed cost for the system because we do have to have the system there in case those customers utilize water. And we maintain the current senior discount of $4, so that is shown at the bottom of that as well. For the volumetric charge, the present rates is the first column on the left. You can see the first 1,000 is included in the minimum, and that is maintained across the next 5 years. But as you go down to the 1,000 to 2,000, currently that's $10.07, and then 2,000 and over is $11.31. And so we thought it would help clarify things if we merge those together, and it's basically an average unit rate for that for the water. And this includes the rate adjustment to produce the revenue, that dash line that we were looking at from the revenue requirements summary slide. For sewer, again, the fixed charges mirror water, and so we're looking at the potential capacity based on that meter. We're maintaining those relationships across the 5-year projected period, as well as the senior discount. The minimum, the first 1,000 gallons, again maintained, so customers pay that as part of the fixed charge, and they get the first 1,000 gallons included. And then a similar change as to water, where we're removing the second 1,000 gallon essentially, and then over 2,000 gallon tier, and moving towards all customers would be charged uniformly over 1,000 gallons. And then the option for being billed on winter water use is shown right below that. And so customers would be able to, in the residential customer class, choose the winter water average billing method if they wanted to. So we showed this graph on the 15th last month, so we just updated it based on the proposed rates. You can see the present rates currently there, and then the proposed in green. You do bump up a little bit, but still very affordable and on the lower end of this graph. And this is at 3,500 gallons a month for water and sewer combined. And so just to wrap up, also I wanted to mention, we talked about the savings, around $30 million, just over $30 million if we can go with the SRF program, over $1 million per year that would save the sewer utility. So, we just want to keep getting that message out so that the public, when they vote, can have be fully aware of the benefit of these programs, because as you can see, it would be $108 million under a bonding scenario rather than $77 million if we can get the vote approved. And that is all my slides. I'll open up Mayor for me. You can go back or any questions.
Great, thanks, Josiah. Does anybody have any questions on the updated presentation this evening?
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work and for joining us again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.